moment made you say to yourself, okay, I've gone too far? Story 1. I was at a small rock club and some dude pushed me, and without thinking I pushed him back. Turns out he had a friend and they were both bigger than me. My first thought was, well, then 2 even bigger guys magically appear behind me and said to the first 2, do you have a problem with our friend? The first 2 guys quickly left, and after I profusely thanked the 2 giants, they told me they saw the guy push me first for no reason. They thought the first 2 were just looking for an excuse to fight someone smaller than them and that they didn't really want a fair fight. Turns out they were right and saved me from getting my kicked. Edit. Thanks for gold, kind stranger, I really appreciate it. Story 2. I've posted about this before, but I accidentally pretended that my wife was black for a while. Long story short, my wife and I are white. Our youngest son is adopted and is biracial black-white. I started taking him to a majority black barbershop when he was around 2 because his hair started getting wild and our local barbers didn't seem to know how to cut it right. They were talking about something and said, well, you would know since you're married to a black girl. I just laughed and nodded. I should have explained the situation, but I didn't. When I kept going back and they would make references to me having a black wife and started asking questions about being in an interracial relationship, some of them were in interracial relationships, and the topic came up from time to time, I realized I was in too deep. Note, I did eventually come clean and everyone thought it was hilarious. Edit. Yes, I have posted this before, that's why I started my comment off with the words, I've posted about this before. If you have seen it, then I guess it's because of the fact that I have posted this before. Story 3. When I was around 14, I stole my parents' credit card to buy flags on eBay. After probably the 50th flag, they got suspicious about how I was getting all these flags, so I realized I had to stop. I'm not sure how they didn't get suspicious earlier though. Edit. Hey, race a photo of some of the flags. Story 4. Calling my uncle from jail. Haha. Oops, in jail, help me out. And him saying, haha, no, I said I wouldn't help. I was like, I know you said that, but now it's real. Yeah, still no. Story 5. I was looking for my friend's house. His house number was 1280. I saw house number 1210, 1240, 1260. I knew I was getting close. Then I saw 1290. I had gone too far. I got really sucked into an online game called Dominion years ago. Heck, I don't even remember how long it was. I remember there was a bunch of races you could pick, and you'd build up your civilization. It was all text-based, and after so long could attack other people and steal land, or explore land yourself. Every hour was a tick or something where things would advance, either buildings or attacks or whatever. At first it was a fun thing my group of online friends would play. We never really pushed for high ranks each season, just had fun with it. Eventually though I got really hardcore into it, finished 11th one season. In order to do that, I had tons of alarms set for when troops would come inland would come a neck. It was absurd. I barely slept at all because I was constantly getting up to check things or send my guys hour or whatnot. I was out of high school but still lived at home, so I had to be completely silent so I wouldn't alert my parents that I was doing this to avoid all the questions. One night I almost got caught at about 2 a.m. and ended up sitting in the dark completely still for 2 hours while I waited for my father to come downstairs, get on the computer, and then finally go outside so I could get back on the computer, finish what I was doing and go back to bed. It was that point I finally realized how stupid it was getting and stopped playing hardcore. Transitioned to a peaceful playstyle and then stopped playing a couple seasons later. Story 6. I looked up how to die as a joke and my school found out and asked me what my emotions were. I was too embarrassed to say it was a joke so I put sad and they sent me to a mental hospital. I was there for 4 days and came out with 000 bill. Sometimes the joke is not worth it. When my dealer thought it would be hilarious to sell me meth instead of ecstasy gel cap. I mean the high was pretty awesome but it was then I realized I needed to stop hanging out with those people before I went any farther. Story 7. When I haven't slept in 4 days straight and I started seeing my ribs and I realized I was just living on soup and water, it was time to quit crystal meth. Story 8. I'm at a grungy hipster club, and I'm on the dance floor minding my own business when a cute girl smiles at me. I smile back, and she immediately says, "What are you doing with your face?" I realize I have gone too far, and I don't smile at people anymore. Story 9. Victim of abuse. I was sick of being used as a punching bag and swung one back at her, then promptly walked away. She posted a picture of her busted nose on Facebook and claimed I beat her, and that's when I thought I went too far. I shouldn't have stooped to her level, but then no one believed what she put and called her out on her. So I guess it was a temp moment. Story 10. I ran from the police on foot through dense kudzu and thorns. I hopped 2 fences, lost my phone and my slides, laying prone behind some random person's house dirty, covered in lacerations from thorns and shoeless. I realized it had gone too far. Edit. This got a bit of traction. Okay, so myself and 3 other buddies decided to smoke some weed and the friend who's driving decided to pull over in the parking lot of a school. It should be fine because it's after midnight and the school is closed. Wrong. They had the trespass sensor where if you go in and don't come out after a certain time it alerts the authorities. The cops showed up as we were dancing around the car playing music outside passing a joint. I remember red and blue lights as I turned to see the back of my 2 friends, the ones not driving halfway over a fence into the next neighborhood. I looked back at my friend who drove as he gave me a look like, "Dude, I can't leave my car," as I took off running too. Looking back, it was some silly kid. I got away and the cop just took my friend home and told his parents as he lived nearby. He did tell my friend if he found us we were going to jail for running and marijuana possession. Kids, if you're gonna do drugs in the security of your home. Story 11. Years ago I walk into a liquor store, some dude walks up and says, "Brian dude, I didn't know you got out." He gives me this big hug. I don't know who this guy is, but he's clearly drunk. Thinks him this dude Brian, that was apparently incarcerated. Not wanting to upset him, I just go along with it. I give him a handshake and say good to see you. I pay for my stuff and leave. This went on for 5 years, around the 3-year mark of me being Brian at the Packy. One day, the dude says that the police were looking for me. They were looking for Brian, not me. At this point, multiple people there assumed I was Brian. So I figure it's in my best interest not to go to this store for a while. I had taken it way too far to try and convince these people that they made a mistake, and I just never corrected them. A couple years later, I've pretty much forgotten about it. My hair's longer, I have facial hair, am driving a different car, I go to old liquor store, and see the drunk dude with a couple of his friends in the parking lot smoking. I walk in past them, and they kind of just stare. As I'm leaving, one of them says Brian. I ignore it. Original drunk dude walks over, and says hey Brian, long time. I tell him my real name. He just looks at me, smiles, and says okay, that's actually smart. Story 12 coworker, well, call him Jack, missed like a week of work after he injured his ankle playing basketball with his kids. Head just turned 40. So a few of us were joking that he was getting too old to be giving 100 against them. He's ultra competitive, and they're fairly athletic. So a couple of days before he came back, another coworker Alex mentioned that he had a wheelchair at home from when his wife broke her ankle. I had the bright idea that we just had to replace Jack's desk chair with the wheelchair. So on lunch, Alex and I take off to his house, climb up into his attic, and load up the wheelchair. Getting back to work was when I had the we have gone too far moment. See, my work is surrounded by barbed wire fencing and requires a special car pass to be able to drive a car in. But there's no way we're pushing this thing through the turnstile we normally use, so we get a car pass from our admin assistant, drive in, unload the wheelchair, and hide the original desk chair in a third coworker's cubicle. It got a good laugh, and Jack actually used the chair as his desk chair for a few weeks just to enjoy the prank. It was just a few months after that we learned this could have been seen as age-related harassment, so it's definitely not something I'd ever do again. Thankfully though, Jack really loved that we'd put in so much work just to make a joke at his expense. Some bonus, we've gone too far, we also printed an info packet for those chairlifts that help the elderly go upstairs and hung that on his cubicle wall. In retrospect, so glad he took it well. Story 13, when I had a mental breakdown laying in the doorway of my room and the hallway because I couldn't find my English paper for college, I realized that I was stressing myself out way too much. Last time I took 9 classes in one semester. Story 14, I came home after a party, and the after party, walked into my apartment while the sun was coming up, and pissed myself. A bottle of whiskey, countless beers, a gram of cocaine and a line of Adderall led up to it. Actually, a decade under the influence led up to that moment. I haven't touched a drink or drug since. It's been 46 days and I will never go back. Story 15, decided not to go on a Tinder date as soon as I realized she was a typical gold digger. However, played along for a while and told her it was fine that she had decided to order a ton of drinks and stuff. Went a bit too far by making her order lamb. It turned out she did not bring her wallet with her. I wonder why, and had to wait for her dad to pay her out of the restaurant. Apparently they were religious. So imagine the disappointment her dad must have gone through, realizing his daughter had been going out with strangers, without carrying any money, ordering drinks and lamb a sin when she had told him that she was off to study. Story 16, when I broke up my ex and the guy she dumped me for, I didn't want her back, I just wanted her to not be with the guy she cheated with. I should have been bigger than I was. It was vindictive, and stupid. Story 17, my last job was absolutely terrible. Sometime in the last month, I noticed my legs starting to lock up as soon as I got off the elevator. I dreaded getting to my desk so much my body was attempting to refuse to let me. Holy, indeed, for the record, a lot of people were jealous of this job. Most of my coworkers hated it too. It definitely has a nice sheen on it, but don't assume you'll like it until you try it. It was for large corporations, small cable service. Small meaning a total of 15 of us in charge. The hours were set and no one was allowed to take a full weekend off except my immediate supervisor, because rules matter. Stupidly, I took the grave shift, 12A-9A, because I figured I'm introverted enough that it wouldn't make too much of a difference. So I definitely ruined things for myself to an extent. There were 2 tasks: 1, investigate outage reports and contact the powers that be, if needed, and 2, QC every device in the room. If you had task 1, you could expect to sit on your hands until 5 a.m., then get slammed as soon as the East Coast turns on Fox to wake up. If you had task 2, you were done sometime between 2A and 4A, if the Wi-Fi felt like cooperating. So upon my hire, we had a 9-hour shift with 4 hours of uptime. Reasonable, right? Then they expanded the offices, hired 2 managers. One's okay, the other is literally the worst human I've ever met, and took task 1 away from us. So then our job became juggling 2 hours of work between 2 to 3 people, if the Wi-Fi held, talking to pedantic manager who set up individual Slack channels for us to say hello and goodbye in because he didn't want to read the group one, and helping the poor new hires who PM'd us constantly because manager kept giving them bad directions. Also, for some reason they never switched the HQ phone to the new offices, so even though our team literally never touched the outage reports again, if something major happened, we had to call the providers, and we weren't allowed to leave if we were on a call. On a good day, it was finish work at 2 a.m. watch award winners and about everyone with good coworkers sit on hands for 7 hours straight, don't go crazy, and on a bad day, It was finish work at 7 a.m. thanks to Wi-Fi lag. Boss is at peak throughout. New team talks to us constantly, and may even get a little sleazy. We had one woman on each shift. Being the overnight one was not fun. Holy, apparently there's an emergency. Get on the phone and be quiet until an engineer shows up. In 3 hours. Don't go crazy. A lot of my coworkers had a side gig that they were doing instead of sitting on their hands. That's all well and good, but again you had to stop immediately if something big happened. And again, when something big happened, all we could really do was sound the alarm and wait until it was over. None of us were engineers. I tried to get into writing again but found I couldn't pick it up and drop it and pick it up and drop it. And then I realized that doing the same thing for my livelihood makes me feel like dirt, so I quit. TLDR, I like to feel active at work and sleep during normal times, and I didn't realize how much that plays into my mental health. I'm better now. ETA again. The last straw was one good night when I was completely alone and just running down the clock. Morning shift coworker came in 2 hours early to help with all the nothing we had to do. She said she was kinda hungover. Would I mind if she napped for a bit, then napped the entire 2 hours? Fair enough, there was literally nothing to do, but we were being paid to be ready in case something came up. Goddamn it. I called a good manager and said something like, if this is your acceptable standard, then why am I bothering? I don't see a reason for me to be here. He said no, they need me without specifying why. And this is just the nature of the job. K. The time in high school when I strangled a guy until he was unconscious for constantly annoying me in class. I even planned it ahead of time. That's when I realized I had an anger problem. Story 18. Finding my ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend's criminal record. I was like, okay, this is weird. I know way too much about this girl. I have never met, and will probably never meet, but sometimes I still check her Facebook, cause I want to see if she's posted pictures of him. She hasn't, which is just pathetic on a whole new level. Story 19. I was cleaning my bookshelf and rearranging my books just this Thursday, and I thought, this is way too much books and I haven't even read most of them. I'm spending way too much to buy them, and I don't even make time to actually use it for its intended purpose, i.e., reading it instead of using it for display. Story 20. I live in a rural community in Scotland, not the one in my username. As an incomer to what is basically a reservation for the genetically handicapped, I took a lot of flack simply for being from somewhere else, especially when my neighbors found out that I was half English. My father is from south of the border. Long story short, our car was damaged, garden trashed, etc., but I decided that guile was the better weapon here and, having identified the culprit, decided to extend the hand of friendship by inviting said cowardly neighbor around for a few beers. After a few bottles of cold ones sat in the garden, he suddenly needed to have a that just wasn't going to wait, but I denied his request to use my toilet and said he would have to go home and drop his friends off at the pool there. Thanks to the very small amount of powerful laxative, I dropped in 2 of his beers and just sat sniggering away as he tried to run, maintain his dignity and not himself all at the same time. Now he just eyes me suspiciously and steers clear. I just smile pleasantly at him with narrowed eyes. I smile because what he doesn't know is that I only put the laxative in a couple of his beers, but I rimmed the top of every bottle with my helmet before giving them to him. I told my brother this story and he just went, yeah, way too far. You need to stop that. Just punch him next time. Story 21. When I got into a 2-day back and forth argument on a Facebook mom group, I actually had to step back and ask, is this really who I want to be? A mom, arguing with another mom on a group. I really could have used my son's napping time way more productively. Story 22. One time a group of us, poor students, were pre-drinking. Classic hypothetical scenarios appear. Someone asks how much would you need to be paid to eat a spoon. If someone in the group wanted to look big and said 20, normally it would be laughed off, but instead I grabbed the money out my wallet and put it on the table. He agreed that we should go on with the bet. Never has it been more apparent in my life that I took it too far than looking at the shocked faces of 20 close friends as I walked into the lounge with a spoon of my own feces. Needless to say, the spoon went out the window and the 20 back in my wallet. Story 23. High dose of shrooms. About an hour in at the very start I was already kneeling on my floor crying while the walls moved around me. My thoughts were projected in front of me like some 3D chessboard of my emotions. Got a bit too weird. Immediately went to hurl to tone down the trip. Story 24. Mine isn't super exciting, but here goes. My son is 17 now, so whenever Fallout 4 came out we went and bought it. He likes having someone watch him play, so I watched him play Fallout 3, and really enjoyed the concept. So we buy Fallout 4 and I help by looking stuff up on my phone as he gets stuck or as we need to find bobbleheads or trying to do whatever. In the end he and I were spending like 6 to 8 hours a day playing this game, me just sitting there. My husband would come home and it was awkward explaining how dinner wasn't done because I was watching kid play a video game. Playing a video game and not doing what you're supposed to is bad enough, but just watching someone play a video game forever is sad. We spent like 100 hours playing that game. I actually enjoyed it. It was like we took a trip together, just our memory. He doesn't ever play games like that now. He plays with friends online, and if I suggest things he pulls off his headphones and says what, dash. Story 25. I was 12 and was pretty big as a kid. I sat next to a girl in class who I picked on every day, until one day my insults made her cry. Young me was in shock and ran from the scene. She confronted me the next day saying she was sorry if she annoyed me, and I ended up crying too. Story 26. When I was a kid, my best mate and I trespassed onto this huge farm. They had a field full of dead tractors, trucks and trailers. It was so cool to poke around. It almost felt apocalyptic. I climbed out of one of the trucks to see two dogs hurtling towards us from afar, and behind them a jeep coming right at us. What ensued was a chase through field and woodland into Christ knows where. We were eventually caught when the two Alsatians caught up. They didn't attack us but probably would have if we had tried to get away. Luckily we were only reprimanded by the landowner, and it didn't go any further as we had caused no damage. They were movie props, being sold to auction. We were shitting it though, seriously, 2 dogs and a 4x4 after us 2 lads in the woods. Story 27. I threw a rock at the back of my childhood bully's head because I was mad that he managed to make my teacher punish me for injuring myself. When one of his friends henchmen pushed me into a wall, I was promptly suspended for a week. Worth it, but the kid also had to get checked out for concussions, so maybe I went too far. Story 28. Directions said, make a left at the light. Missed the light, it was dark, so I nearly ran head-on into oncoming traffic when the avenue became a one-way street. Story 29. Last summer a good friend of mine was always on Tinder. Every time I would see him swiping on girls trying to get laid. A buddy of mine thought it would be a funny idea to make a fake Tinder profile and try and match with him and basically just catfish him. We make a profile posing as some hot chick and actually managed to match with him and talk to him for 2 weeks. It was all fun and games until things started to get weird, and he proceeds to tell us what positions he wants to us in and how we make him so horny that he is busting out of his jeans. He then asked us for a Snapchat so he can show us his penis and what he would do to us. Me and my buddy both looked at each other and agreed this had gone too far, deleted the profile and never talked about it again. Story 30. Not me, but my friend was in a gay club and 2 guys were talking to him. He went to the bar and the barmaid warned him that the 2 of them are known to mug the person when they leave. He proceeded in the middle of the club to walk up to them and kick out of both of them. He was banned from the club for life. He admitted he should have just left quickly, but he didn't want another person to be mugged by them. The 2 guys were banned as well shortly after. Story 31. I woke up around 1:10 p.m. with my out and phone playing a roll of Alan Watts inspirational videos on YouTube, next to a half-eaten plate of ground beef with mushrooms and black olives in it. I remember that I have to work at 3:00 p.m. and begin everlasting ponder what happened last night, so I hopped up to go get a glass of sweet tea. Tea tastes weird. Open the lid to find a full tray of blueberries dumped into the tea pitcher, turn to put the cup in the sink and the pan of ground beef with mushrooms and black olives is completely submerged in dishwasher, like 1.5 pounds of ground beef. Also, there was a half-gone 30-pack of beer and a pack of cigarettes next to me on the couch. Last I remembered I had 1 Long Island at the bar and was 4 beers into my 6-pack of Miller Lite bottles. All of these things got there somehow and I am the only one responsible for how they got there, but I couldn't tell you how. It's weird. Second time blacking out drinking. I wasn't even really that lit compared to any other OL party or binge. The first time was 2013. I think I'm good on getting up now. And my roommate gets home at 7 a.m., goes to sleep around 11 a.m., so he definitely got a good eye on my hog if he wanted to. Story 32. This happened when I was 14 years old. I was at the stairway to our classroom and I saw a few girls, who were my classmates, on their way to the class. I asked them which period is it right now. We used to say period instead of lecture in our school. For no reason they started giggling and told me to check it on my own. I don't know why, but I didn't like the way they said it to me and I said, I thought you know better about periods. I know it was inappropriate to say, but being the simpleton I had said it and there was no turning back. They were totally shocked. Story 33. Pretty much any time a girl starts crying because of something I said or continue to say without backing down, doesn't matter if I was right or not. Story 34. Last year I was subscribed to every BuzzFeed channel on YouTube and watched cute cat compilations. This year I watched a video of a woman ripping a cat in half with a meat cleaver, also watched a man behead himself. A combination of memes and morbid curiosity traumatized me. Story 35. Ran into a bathroom to puke during a party. There was a redhead friend of mine taking on the toilet. I pulled apart her knees and puked a few inches from her fire crotch with a doo-doo an inch behind that. Looked up and said, I'm so sorry. Just then another friend burst through the door with the same intention and puked on the back of my head. Haven't been drunk since. Story 36. Me and my mum were driving to LA down the 5 freeway in California and took a wrong turn into the mountains. 1 hour later we realized we went too far. There were warning explosion signs and there were craters on the sides of the road. Turns out we made a wrong turn into a government explosive manufacturing and testing facility. Oops. Story 37. A few years ago, I went through a pretty horrible breakup with a girl which left me emotionally and financially ruined. She lived in a different country, this is Europe, so less than an hour away, but still involved flights a few times a month, and she had a kid from a previous relationship, so I just ended up pouring money into this situation due being stupidly and hopelessly in love. Without going into too much detail, when it ended I had gone thousands into debt because of it and was left pretty devastated. Although I have a good job and earn a fairly decent wage, it took me a few months after that to build my way out of debt by living basically like a hermit. I was also depressed, so being broke on top of that really made those 6 months a miserable experience. I barely left the house, other than to drag myself to the office and then back home again. I had friends who I would see occasionally, but I wasn't exactly Mr. Fun during that period, so spent most of my time alone. My routine for a short while was to go to the store on my way home from work on Friday, buy the cheapest own-brand bottle of whiskey I could find and try to make it last the weekend, with varying levels of success. On my very worst weekend, at the height of my period of self-pity, It had reached Saturday night and I was already down to my last glass of whiskey. I didn't have the funds to buy any more, so I was trying to nurse this last drink as much as I could. However, when I got up from the sofa to use the bathroom, I accidentally kicked the almost full glass over, spilling my precious medicine onto the floor. Without thinking, I swooped down onto all fours and proceeded to the spilled whiskey from the carpet. I actually did that. But like a revelation scene from a dumb movie, I turned my head and caught my reflection in the patio doors. Never have I seen a more pathetic sight. So yeah, that was my okay, I've gone too far moment. Story 38. I was an RA at my old university. I took my job seriously and helped whoever I could, except I didn't enforce policy because I wanted the students to have fun and not get in trouble. This mentality formed slowly though throughout both semesters. When I did a line of cocaine 5 months in with my roommate, and we were both drunk is pretty much when I said this to myself. Story 39. I had a house, 3 beautiful girls, a wife, and a high-paying job. Lost everything but the job to an addiction to painkillers. For everyone who is struggling with addiction, put my story into perspective. I felt like Superman for the first year, but after that I was just taking them to avoid the crash, which consists of crippling diarrhea, as well the overwhelming thought to get more pills to the point of not being able to sleep for a couple days. Although I make a 6-figured income, one was spending in excess of $100 a day to satisfy my habit. That's around $36,000 a year. My gone too far moment was when I took our last $100 out of our bank account to buy more, knowing we still needed groceries. I felt so ashamed I thought about taking my own life, and that is when I decided to enroll in treatment. I'm writing this from a very well-known treatment center in MN, and although I know I'm not the first to go through this, I hope people can see who addiction truly hurts, and no matter how much you lie and get away with it, the truth eventually comes out. Story 40. Picture this: I'm sitting on the curb, vomit a few feet away, blood pouring down my face. Half the rugby team has fled, as has the pedal hopper driver who pushed my drunk into the light pole in the first place. Story 41. Online, trying to explain what we believe existed before the Big Bang to some paranoid, anti-science window licker. I was just like, WTF am I doing with my life? I should be enjoying myself. Go and eat some profiteroles and watch Faulty Towers. Story 42. I knew my alcoholism had gone too far when one day, after pretty lax half day of non-intensive work, I went home, locked up, and decided that I'd have a single whiskey to get me in the mood to sleep, you know, like old ladies do to shut up their annoying grandkids. 6 hours later I woke up semi-dressed in a nature reserve half a mile from my house, on a strange unfamiliar sofa, and with only one suspiciously wet sock. I've been sober ever since, or at least more sober. Story 43. When I was a kid my mom was pretty shitty, always swore at me, ignored me, etc. One day I got pissed and threw her phone away while she was sleeping, heavily debated digging it out of the trash, but then she got up and I didn't feel like dealing with her yelling at me anymore. Story 44. Bought Bloodborne game for PS4. It was so addictive I didn't pay attention. I hadn't showered for a week. Then on Sunday before getting to work I thought to myself, when was the last time I showered? Took a bath real quick. Story 45. Broke out the throwaway for this one. This actually happened a few hours ago. Now will admit I'm into weird when it comes to pleasure. Something I started doing is spraying my with cold water while masturbating in the shower. I can't stand cold water when I'm not horny, but in the heat of the moment it really makes things more intense. But today I got more adventurous. I decided to fill the entire bathtub with painfully cold water. I started pleasuring the python, and slowly lowered myself into the tub. It was a fun time, but when I finished it was awful, but after I snapped out of my post-nut transcendence into nirvana things got bad. I quickly got out of the water and my entire body hurt, and all I could do was curl up and shiver in a towel. Never again. Story 46. I criticized a high school teacher's teaching methods and made her cry in front of the classroom. She left and didn't return for a few days. When she got back, she asked to speak with me privately. She thanked me for pointing out what she was doing wrong, but said that was a conversation that she wished we had privately. Turns out, she was going through some heavy divorce and putting her mom with dementia Alzheimer's in an assisted living facility, and she was struggling with depression. That was probably a bit TMI to tell a student, but she agreed that she wasn't living up to the standards that she had set for herself as a teacher. She adjusted the lesson plan, thanked me for the advice, and we met up several times privately after that to discuss the class. To this day I feel bad about calling her out like that in front of the class. Note I've told this story before on Reddit, and a lot of Redditors very loudly called bullshit, so go for it if you think I'd make something like this up. Story 47. I love writing a lot. I like to talk, I have a lot to say, and if I'm writing there's no pressure to shut up. I'm taking a psych course online and literally last night I wrote an extra credit essay, only worth 12 points out of total 900 or so. I wrote 5 pages before doublespace. Okay, I've gone too far, trimmed it down to 3, which really hurt my feelings, but I knew I had to, so 6 pages doublespace. I had 9 sources, including one from a Find My Grave website. Story 48. My brother is 2.5 years older than me, and at the time this occurred he was bigger and stronger than me. He was also the stereotypical big brother who would taunt me incessantly. He was sitting on one couch, while I was on the other. He was calling me various names while I tried to watch my TV show. I tried to ignore this for about 15 minutes, but then snapped, jumped up, crossed the room in a flash and laid 4 punches into his face as fast and hard as I could. I expected an immediate and violent reaction at first, but then the blood started flowing freely from his nose. He ran off crying. I'd never done anything like that before, and I felt like a complete piece of for making my older brother cry. Story 49. I was doing ecstasy one night at my house and started to feel funny, so I went in the kitchen for water, and all of a sudden the world rushed in front of me and my heart rate jumped higher than it's ever been. I grabbed my phone and had 911 ready to dial because I thought I might have a heart attack. I later realized it was a panic attack, and if I passed out it nobody would have known. I calmed down some finally and decided to go to bed, but I just couldn't sleep. I was being haunted by some episodes of SVU I watched earlier. I couldn't get out of my mind. For a whole week after that night, every time I noticed the sun go down I'd start getting anxious, and I lived with a sense of dread. I kept feeling like someone was waiting outside to break in, and I'd check the doors and windows over and over. Any noise would startle me and I could barely sleep. It was awful. I still get triggered sometimes with anxiety by things that remind me of that night. My advice is to never do any drugs ever, but if you really want to, there are safe ways to go about it. My experience is a result of my own abuse, not the fault of the drug itself, but I don't do it anymore.